Talking with no mo. Talking with no mo. Step in the room, let's go. Got that spark, got that flow. Quick hit talk, real talk. Every word on the mark. Lean close, hear that name every time. Bring the flame, one more round. Let it show. Talking with no mo.
It's all right, guys, gals, Indian Town, Martian County, everybody abroad. Doot, 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 doot. This is visit number 2 with Miss Melissa Haque. Let's welcome Melissa back aboard. Melissa, how you doing today?
Outstanding, and you?
Any better? I'd be twins. The world couldn't handle it.
Every day's a good day.
Oh my goodness, it sure is. A lot going on out there. Wanted to have you back on, and you wanted to come back on because you have some information you're going to share with us. But before we do, there's a couple of things that you and I have both been experiencing out there, and one of them is this kind of, I don't know how you would explain it. This thing that went on with KC when she was your moderator, for not even a moderator, she was the one asking the questions and keeping the peace. I guess you might want to call her a moderator, but at your forum that you just had for all of the candidates, I know you invited everybody. I know that Carmine was screaming that he was never invited. What really happened on that?
So I invited Casey. That was last minute, the day before. I just decided to reach out to her because we were talking about different people to moderate within the village. And we know that this is a very charged election season. So we decided that, hey, let's not be one of us. Let's not be somebody we know. Let's pull someone from further afield who has in past interviewed every single one of the
Hmm.
candidates. Because we went back and watched Carmine's prior interview with her and Karen's. We went through everything and we tried to look at, the new candidates to see, how she had that rapport and how she worked fairly and brought out their good points and their campaigns and, and things that might not be so popular with everybody. So we thought, great. So everybody agreed. They gave me permission. I reached out to her, and lastminute.com, she was able to make it, but she had not been involved or any part of the organizing committee. I have any idea that we were going to reach out to her until that day before. So it was interesting. And she was, like I said, she was not, doing something else. So she said, sure, she'd love to. Now, one of the first things she asked was, has every candidate been invited? First question she asked. And we told her, yes, that the same methodology was used for every candidate. And I sent her the screenshots and the videos and how that went out across each of the different Indian Town forums on social media on Facebook. So she had that with her because she was concerned. So we made sure she had it. So every candidate was invited based off Facebook forums in different rooms where they're already posting their campaign materials and their meet and greets and their posters and interacting, or at least putting those on there. So we tried to hit every single one of those, and we did. And then candidates put information out, and then more videos went out. And Karen came on, and she said, yep, she wanted to do it. And each person was being told, as they said they wanted to come on, hey, get yourself a representative, somebody from the community that can sit on the organizing committee to represent, your space on there to help get this together, to figure out, what room we're going to have it in, what moderator, what sound equipment, how we, let the community know. And we decided that it was a good idea to use social media because a lot of people don't leave the house.
Right.
Politics can be uncomfortable for some folks. Some people don't go to village council meetings. So we thought it was a really good audience that we had missed in previous meet and greets had missed by getting these people that are online an opportunity to see it and advertise it that way, just through that word of mouth through each person and tagging each one of the candidates so that people could be involved. And all the questions, every single last question that was asked for 2.5 solid hours came from the community.
Yeah, no, I know that. I was there, and I've explained that to people too, that there's just a red basket, blank 3x5 cards and pens, and you put your message in there, and it was picked out one at a time, and there was not one that was left behind. So there was no favoritism, picking or choosing or anything. So I guess didn't you say you even put in a call to Carmine at one point to see why he hadn't responded?
Yeah, I found out from Casey. She'd messaged me and she said that Carmine had told her that he had gotten a hold of her, she'd gotten a hold of him. I don't know which way. But he said he had not been invited. And I said, wait a minute. This went out equally. No candidate was emailed, no candidate was phone called. They were all, straight up just done on social media equally in the same
Yeah.
process. And I said, but if he wants to come, I'm sure everyone involved would love for him to come, and anybody else, who's on that an incumbent to come.
Okay.
So I picked up the phone and I made a phone call to Carmine's number. And he's got, a voice message there where you have to put your name in and they decide whether to accept the call or not. Must have been busy, didn't accept it. So I left a voice message saying that, hey, we'd love to have you. I know it's last minute now because Casey says you didn't know. I said, but here's how it was put out. And I explained that.
Yeah.
But we would absolutely guaranteed make room for you. And then I reached out to Angelina via Messenger and told her the same thing. She was great. She was wonderful. She replied kindly back. And we knew Karen was not going to be able to make it because she was doing something with family, with her daughter, which was, family first. And we respected that. So that's how it evolved. But yeah, everybody was given equal opportunity. Nobody got a special phone call or a text message or an email. It was
Yeah.
done via the platforms they posted.
No, that's cool. I wanted to ask that question because one, we have a town, we talkaboutmartin.com and the Greater Indian Town Community Alliance on Saturday the 15th at the Outpost, 11 a.m. That was a nice plug, wasn't it? We
Yeah.
have we have a Town Hall 3.0 coming up where we've actually put an interactive map together that we're going to go over with people and demonstrate to them how the effects from these data centers will actually, affect their lives and the children within the school. It's amazing to see the distances of schools. But anyway, we invited the entire county commission and any candidate running. We also sent them a questionnaire of 3 questions relating to data centers. Same with the school board and the Indian Town Council, as well as any candidate for any 3 of those were all sent emails. Now, we found our emails either from municipal sites like the Martin County site we sent to the official commissioners' addresses. For the school board, we did the same. And for the local, we didn't have that ability because they don't publish email addresses up there. You have to put information in a little box and you're limited to the number of characters and you can't really format it. So our questionnaire would not have been too legible. So what we did was we scoured all of their campaign materials that they're putting out over social media and in print on their signs, and we took the addresses that we had from press releases, things like that. And it turns out that there were 2 that bounced back: Doc Anderson for school board and Carmine Diapapalopoulos. And we want to make sure, again, because we have been reaching out and I'm trying to get a hold of people that know him to let him know. And I just don't want to hear the same thing at our town hall because we are going to read the answers to whether or not the local candidates and officials will support a pause for the cause or moratorium for data centers in Indian Town. But that's the long and the short on it. And I don't want to have any, last minute, oh, you didn't call me. This was all set up. This was rigged. There's nothing rigged about this. Everybody's answering the questions and sending them in. So anyway, it's a shame that you and I have to come online like this and talk about it. But at the same time, I am grateful that we have the ability to communicate and share our communication and our information with the public. It's up to them whether they listen or not. It's up to us whether we share what we have. And I understand you have some information with regards to campaign donations that's like, wow. You want to share?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, as you know, from the governor's office all the way down, from all of our elections across the United States right now, campaign donations have become a really hot topic. And it's not saying that anybody's, done anything wrong or that it's illegal or they've broken any rules or it's improper influence. I'm not saying that. Disclaimer to anyone who wants to take this and run with it. I'm not saying that at all. What we're looking at is part of the things that came out from the Pew report, and they did a lovely bit of polling and found out that 80% of people felt that those who donated higher amounts than your regular citizen in campaigns had a higher and undue amount of improper influence over those decisions. Not my words, that came from the Pew Institute. So when we started looking at this, I thought, okay, well, let's just see in a lawful campaign with lawful donations. Let's just see what percentages. Because only 9% of people in the United States felt that constituents had influence over their lawmakers in their districts. And they said that 70% of them thought they had actually way too little influence.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. 9% of the voting constituency says that they feel like they have any control over their government on a national level?
Yeah, so they were looking at all kinds of elections from your council
Oh
people to
my
anything,
God.
all the way up to your governors and mayors. And they're having a look at that confidence, that public trust. And I think that talks to a much wider view of people right now. They're asking questions. So I often get people who come back to me and say, "Oh, you're stirring the pot. You're just trying to, create a conspiracy, or you're trying to divide people because you're asking the questions about NDAs." That's another huge subject that is all across the United States in every race. So if your voters, if your citizens of this country are starting to lose that confidence in themselves having an influence on their lawmakers, and are finding there's a massive amount of, people who are making large donations or have special interest having that huge amount of influence, we have a discussion. It's not saying that we like or don't like. It is something that is valid for discussion, just like the NDAs. It doesn't mean we believe people have done something wrong, but we're going to trust but verify. And that's the same thing we should do when we look at our campaign donations, is see where that influence is coming from,
I
see where
agree.
those crossovers are.
Can I ask you one question on that? And you and I think we both know the answer to this, but for those that don't, what is the maximum donation level that a business and or a person can make to a campaign
So
in
it's
Indiantown?
in Indiantown. Oh, I got to go back and double check Indian towns. You know the answer to that one, do you?
I believe it's $1,000.
Yeah, that's what I've got on my list, and I was just going to double check before I said something wrong. So we had maximum donations by each one at $1,000. Now that doesn't mean, and here's where it gets tricky for folks. When people look at campaign finance on any candidate, whether that be your council or all the way up to the governor's office, we see where different individuals who have a
Hmm.
vested interest make those donations. Even in the gubernatorial campaign, we find out that AI and data center developers are right there. And we see PACs and we see how that works. So people are starting to see where that sphere of influence actually does play into policy and decisions that were made, including votes. So I started to have a look and just to see, where are we with Indiantown? And it's not that anybody's done anything wrong, but let's see where those donations are coming from, because they can make one from themselves. They can make one from their LLC. They can make them from their next LLC or their corporation. And here we
Hmm.
go. They're
And
putting,
their children can make them, and their spouse can make the same
yes.
donation, and down the line.
And that's where you start seeing that overlap. It's not that they're
Hmm.
not allowed to do that, they are. But you
Hmm.
start then seeing those dollar amounts go higher based upon the same individuals, whether they're representing themselves at their home address or their LLC or their business under another corporate name. They can all be donated, but it's all the same individual who's sitting on the SunBiz documents or that's sitting on a board in relation to a corporation that would
Hmm.
benefit directly or indirectly from council decisions.
Yeah.
So we started looking, and some interesting crossovers came out with amounts. And one of them I had a really good look at, because I've heard on social media lately a lot about how, especially when the thing came to with Casey, oh, undue influence, and because she may have business before the council at some point and that she moderated. Well, let's look at Florida Commerce Park. Now, Florida Commerce Park is right now advertising on their office space and the space they have their data centers, which is interesting. And no data centers come before the council, or that I'm aware of, in planning and development, even put in anything to be reviewed or looked at in regards to a data center. But they're advertising their industrial park material, marketing for data centers and other industrial users with an existing developer agreement history with the village. So when you start looking at, let's just say, Karen, $750 from Sky Farm. Well, where does Sky Farm Strategic Capital LLC come in? Florida Commerce Park. And again, I can't guarantee, and no one can guarantee, how long's a piece of string. Are they going to come for data? Or are they going to come for an existing agreement? Or are they going to want to extend an agreement? That may come before the village. There's no guarantee that it will not. Then you have things like Indico. So if we look at Karen again, you've got $250 there from Indico. Well, we got to look at how that crossover starts to happen with certain individuals whose names come up. So we have the Powers, who come up quite a lot in these. We have Terra Lago that comes up in quite a lot of this. We have some things with Indian Town Rail in there. And you have to ask yourself, are they going to have business? If that's a valid argument that was been put forward by someone else, are they going to ever have anything that comes before, or have they had something that came before the village for a vote? So we look at Warfield Investments is in their Village Square too. And we see how many times these donations cross. And it's not just Karen. And they're not wrong. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with them doing this. They're perfectly within their legal thresholds to do so. But we see that Angelina has had money from Warfield Investments in Village Square too, and that Carmine has had money from Warfield Investments and Indian Town Marine and Village Square too. So we start looking at those overlaps. What are we looking at? And have these individuals had influence? We look at Kevin Power just being the registered agent and manager.
Okay,
Well,
let's back up 1 second. Let's go back through that list of corporations again because a lot of people may not actually understand what those corporations actually do and why this is so important. I mean, if they're in an industrial capacity, okay, I get it. I mean, you're lobbying through your donation. We get it, but why are these companies so important to the discussion? What's the point?
because we find overlap and we find
In
in everything. So, well, I'll explain. So, we have overlap in some people that are involved in different committees and commissions. It may be through the Economic Council of Indiantown. It could be down to somebody who's sitting on a PZAP or served with somebody on a PZAP, as we see a dual crossover there with Scott Watson has sit on the PZEP, and so has another one of the individuals who's donated. Doesn't mean they're not allowed to. That is a process that is afforded by the village council, but you're seeing a sphere of influence that becomes tighter and
But aren't
smaller.
those corporations all related back to data center projects?
Not all of them. Not
No?
all of them. But they're spread across a really interesting thing. Now, land transfers before that indirectly, but no, they're not all related to that.
Ah, okay.
But so what you see is like, for example, I'll just use Moorfield Investments. That was back when Terralago was first starting out and that PUD came. That was the applicant developer that's in the village documents under land development proceedings. So we see that there and we see those donations across the board. You might see one that's 500 here, 500 there, 500 there. It starts to add up when you see it across your candidates.
So they're an active development player here in the Indiantown market.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then you start looking at things like that Florida Commerce Park and what roles people have and where they sit on boards. We look at the different people who have interests in past village business that has come before the council and things that may come before them in that corporate or real estate development network with their interests in future.
Hmm.
So you have to start saying who's got a dog in the fight, who stands to benefit directly or indirectly from having certain people on a council elected that may look at them more favorably. Does it mean they will? If they're ethical and moral, they won't. They'll do their jobs as they're supposed to be done. But that public perception through those donations starts to speak volumes, especially when you compare the amount of money that's given by developers or people who benefit directly or indirectly from that commerce area to your average citizen who donates. And we
Have any
still,
of those developers in the past, do you know? I mean, if you don't know, it's okay. We can go back and look, but do we know if any of these developers in the past have donated and may have received what we could perceive as favorable outcomes since the last election? Did
and,
they?
and you can't determine that because that would be an ethics conversation that you would have
Hmm.
to have the documentation and evidence to prove that
Yeah.
through an influence of vote. And to be fair, that doesn't exist right now in what's been found in documentation. So there's no suggestion that that's ever taken place.
Okay. All right.
But that influence going forward with that crossover is really, really important because people need to understand that It's a focus look on people who, like I said, benefit directly or indirectly. And when those donations, when you see them from the public, you're talking about $25, $35, sometimes 50, sometimes 250. One person decided to give 300, but then you start looking at the corporate donations or from those LLC donations.
Mhm.
Sky Farm 750, Market Street Indiantown 500, Indico 250. Then again, we're going to see crossover names in those interests and those boards, and a lot of like Kevin Powers family, Indiantown Rail. These people are going to eventually, reasonably, well, they may or may not have business before the village, and definitely have had business before the village before. Looking at Warfield Investments, 500, Village Square 2, 500, another 500 from Warfield Investments, $1,000 from Indiantown Marine, Village Square 2, LLC, $1,000. So when you start adding these up, you're
Mhm.
seeing a large proportion of those campaign finances pushing through people who've either already had things go through the village council, either sitting in their tenure of the council you have now that's running again, or will come before them with probability in the future because they've talked about certain things with the council that they'd like to see in their vision for development, which is a natural thing to do. Talk about that and get it out there. We're thinking about this. We'd like to do this one day. We see how, we'd like to develop our area. But that monetary influence sits there. Now, whether it actually has any influence on the candidate, we have no proof of that. And there's no suggestion of that wrongdoing. But that public perception of who's the money behind their candidate is not a perception when we can document it and people look, because
Yeah.
campaign finance is a big thing right now.
I would turn that whole thing around and look at it from a different angle and not even look at it from a, hey, I know that everybody's going to want to turn this into some big conspiracy theory, which it is not. It's very simple to say that when I donate a sum of money to a candidate, I have an intention that that candidate is going to do things that are beneficial for me. For instance, if I give to a candidate that is pro Second Amendment, or is a pro anti-abortion candidate, and that is what I want to get done, and I give money to them. Is there anything wrong with that? No, that's part of the process. I'm telling them, take this money and go make yourself loud so other people can vote for you too. So I think it's fair to say that if you get people that in the past have had a working relationship, which they say that they have an active development agreement with the village, and their money is made off of selling light industrial, and data center space, and they need a governmental process in which to get these things done because they created it. Then it would be fair for me to say in that instance that if it is not for the Second Amendment or for a pro-abortion candidate, it may be for a heavy industrial candidate and a data center candidate, or a candidate that wants very fast track, high density development candidate. So if that's where I'm making my money, I will most definitely go and put that person into place. Okay, I get it. So, what did you find? I mean, how many of these people are actually data center related, and who got the most money, and where are you seeing the stack up? Who's got the grassroots
So
campaigns going, and who has the big donor campaigns?
what we find is with our new candidates that are running now, they're the grassroots. They don't have the corporates, they don't have the out of states, they don't have the big LLCs giving the larger dollar amounts for Indiantown. And I say
Like
large,
Anna.
yeah, you're finding smaller campaign amounts. Some are only putting their own money into the
Wow.
campaign, or a family member is donating, and that's literally it.
That's grassroots.
And that's grassroots at its heart. But the strongest repeat donor pattern that we find is Warfield Investments, which appears both on Carmine's and Angelina's, then Village Square 2, which appears in both candidates' records. And then you have Karen's Clear's documented cluster, which is Sky Farm, Florida Commerce Park, and the Powers Network Group. So you're seeing an overlap there. And when your people are thinking, and people rightfully think, our donations that we give to a candidate, is because we believe, same as these corporate donors, same as LLCs and developers. They believe in the candidate because they believe they will make the decisions that represent them and will help be favorable to their lifestyle, to their economy, to their
Right.
profits, and the end of their taxes. So your citizens give a smaller amount thinking, okay, cool, my voice is being listened to. But you've got much bigger players who are actually sitting across different organizations. Even, we look at the PSAB, PSAB members that have been on there. You start, look at a pattern. And like I said, Watson's not down here. And Scott, don't scream and shout. You're not on here as a donor. You're not on that list. I'm just saying crossover associations with the people who are associated with these donations.
Now, Warfield Investments, isn't that the Garcia family farm that is involved with that?
So that comes down to two individuals actually that were on that original development plan. And it's not listed as Garcia Industries or Terralago or anything like that. It's two individual people who are part of that original application. So no, it's not them,
But
but it's associated.
But yeah, because it looks like on Sunbiz that there is a document showing Warfield Investments LLC with a principal address in Virginia Beach and the title manager as Garcia Family Farm LLC.
Which is interesting. That's where I'm telling you all these crossovers are. So you find, and it's really weird when you start, well, it's not weird, you'll know, when you start looking at all these LLCs, even when we're looking at some of these, data center pre-apps, and the information that we found around, Tesoro, Beskar, Warfield 18, you start seeing those numbers for LLCs, like, Warfield 18, Warfield 19. You'll see an Indian Town 1, you'll see an Indian Town 2, then you'll see plays on Warfield and play on the word Indian Town. So these LLCs are all over the place and they're involved in different aspects. Even one property can have multiple LLCs on different plats on the property.
Mm.
So it's hard when people start backtracking. We talk about transparency, and that really is the goal, is for the people to feel that they are aware of what's happening and the decisions that are being made and the possibilities of what could come forward and have a voice and a say in that in their community. And it be valued, and it be equally as valued as any donor from an LLC or a corporation that's putting in larger money,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
matter equally on the balance of standard. And this is where it starts to start overlapping, like I said, with all those shared names. I mean, these names run across shared interests or shared um, ownership or shared management or shared directoralship or shared uh, board.
Financial, yeah, or
Yeah.
shared financial, outcomes. So yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. I mean, you boil the fat off the bone. What you're telling me is when you went through and you analyzed all these, you found that the incumbents are getting the money from the developer interests that have already built 4.5 million square feet of approved development without capacity, plus the framework potential for the data center on Tesoro and more to come. If this is really simple, it's not about the people at this point that are in the office. It is about the votes that they have made and the outcomes that are coming from them as to whether the people want them to stay or not. And I sure as hell hope that, if this isn't something to change your mind before election day, man, people don't have the interest of the people at heart. They really don't.
And it's difficult because I think, there's everybody's going to vote their conscience and accordingly. And I'm all for it. Whatever happens in this election, I will respect whatever happens because that's the
Hmm.
will of the majority of the people. We work with the people that are in office and we'll go from there. I find what I'm finding more exceedingly frustrating, and from the people that I talk to, is these overlaps. And then, there's the other issues too, but we're not just talking the data center. And I hate when people try to say, well, we're done with data centers. We've established data centers and let's move on to something else. I don't think they quite understand how that affects so many different areas, like your water allocation. Take, for example, the Tesoro PUD. I just want to know how to look back on that from the document that was filed, the one that they had in the pre-document on the 10th, the one that of April 10th that was brought to the meeting, the one that was filed on the 30th, and then what's missing from those provisions. There was a provision in there for them to do wells. that said FPL can do their wells. Well, that provision got changed by the time that was filed to you're going to start off with our water. What?
Hmm.
I think everybody who was in the meeting was under the, the public were under the perception that they were going to drill wells, which still comes from the same aquifer that we're pulling our water department's water from. We're still
Mm-hmm.
talking about the same aquifer here, the Florida aquifer. Here we go. And I'm going, right now they've made a provision because they put that deposit in. It talks about a water deposit in order to guarantee the service, just like they've got, other builders right now waiting in line. This
Mm-hmm.
says that as it comes available, they're going to hook to our water. I was under the impression they were just going to be drilling wells, but that was concerning enough.
Well, let me give you a concern that I have, and that was looking at the village's own GIS overlay map. And by the way, we're down to about 8 minutes left on this particular cast. But looking at their overlay maps, when you look at the boundaries of the Tesoro annexation that was just brought in, and it shows up as green when you put it as an active project. There's this little jut that comes out on Canner Highway, right up to the edge of the canal. And you know what it encloses? A pump house with two very large pumps that looks like it's been put into FP&L's property holdings and taken out of the Army Corps of Engineers, who have recently been seen out there running around as well. Also found out that we have a family that lives less than 800 feet from the property line of the Tesoro project, and a whole new line of people up and down Canner that are finding out about this that are not happy.
And that's the difficult part. It should not have to be this hard. We should not have to be constantly. If we put a record request in and we get information, we get the complete file, and we're up to date as of the day we receive it. If something changes a week from then, a day from then, 2 weeks from then, we have to go back and request. There's no standing order that some member of the public can put in and say, as this updates, hey, can you let us know? I want those documents too.
Right.
You have to constantly be watching this. And why do we watch it? Because it matters. I had no idea that Florida Commerce Park had donated money to campaigns. Reasonable that they should do so. But then when I look at their site and it says they're advertising here for manufacturing and energy related companies and distribution and data centers, I want to know what kind of data centers they're marketing to, because that's a community interest. It could be just like Blue Stream, no big deal, but it might not be
Yeah.
because of that industrial corridor and the power corridor with
Well,
FPL that's there.
I'm more apt to believe that it is only from the different job postings that we're finding now that are specific for data centers, specific for construction, specific for project management, and specific for Indiantown. Their plans are already in effect, and they're already moving forward so that when they get final approval on whatever they think they need or they do need, they're gonna have the people standing there and tell them crank up the bulldozers, boys.
Look, everything is already set for the data center development. You have the zoning, you have the infrastructure with the power, you
Yep.
have the substations that were created. Everything was bit, pieced, and parceled in order to build the perfect environment to do so. Now, when they say, "Oh, maybe we just end up with one," look, you set a precedent with FPL. You open the door, and now they don't need a PUD if they want to split a plat. If they want to split it to warehousing and then a data center and something else, maybe they do that. But there's still some potential there for all of that. And it's not doom and gloom. But if we don't have a say in those protections as a community, if we're not sure the PUDs are good, if we're not sure the LDRs are correct, then it does feel very much like doom and gloom to people
Yeah.
who have property. Our homeowner rights don't stop where developers' rights begin.
Yeah, how do you believe them even when you do get the truth after you've been lied to or misled so many doggone times? And that's part of what we are going to work on the 15th, this coming Saturday, is to bring people up to speed on where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going, and how they can participate, because there are still some things that can be done on all of this, and they haven't heard the last of us, that's for sure. So, anything in closing you want to put back out on the table there, Miss Melissa?
I just want to let people know it is, like I said, you don't have to be worried. You don't have to be doom and gloom. You don't have to be this sad cloud. What you do need to be is proactive and do active citizenship and participate in your government. Because if you don't, they will participate for you
Hmm.
on your behalf. And it may not be what you want. You may think one's okay, but when it comes to something like a data center, you got to talk about those cumulative effects. What if it ends up being more than one? And that what if is a very real possibility with the infrastructure that's set around that electric and that corridor. Wise. We trust, but we verify. And if the truth shows that you've been lied to, govern yourselves accordingly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% on that. And that's why you and I are doing what we're doing. Look, I hope everybody oh, the signs. I didn't tell you about the signs, did I?
No.
Real quick, in closing, this is what happened with the signs. So I'm making them wait all the way through this. Inadvertently. I didn't even think about that. Okay, so I'm out the other day, right? And I'm working in my yard and I'm walking up the driveway and I had been bothered for about 3 hours because I see one of Carmine DePaulo's signs across the street in my neighbor's front yard in his driveway, right across, just pointing straight into my driveway. I'm like, no way, because I know this guy. He's like, So I'm walking back up and he's coming home. He gets out of his truck. He's like, "Did you do this?" I said, "What?" He said, "Put that sign there." I said, "Man, I was losing my faith in humanity thinking you did it." He said, "I didn't put that there."
Oh,
I said, "Oh, no." He said, "Yeah, they probably meant it for you." He said, "Hey, look over there." And just to the east of my property, right on the property line in the easement at the ditch, there's another Carmine DePaulo sign facing my property.
interesting.
Real interesting, isn't it? And to top that off, later that afternoon, guess what I found out in the middle of my garden?
Oh, no.
Uh-huh. A head from a catfish that had been decapitated and thrown into the middle of my yard.
Well, well, well.
So I think one sign, I'll say maybe somebody had no intent, but when there are three that show up like that, and I want to remind everybody where I live is not in the village boundaries. So,
Well, there's a whole lot going on there to unpack. We do see this. I would like to say this is isolated to Indiantown, but we do see some shenanigans, even with Chris Collins having to air tag his. So
I
here we
know
are.
it's crazy. I'm just more blown away with the fish head being thrown in my yard. It's like some kind of Appalachian freaking threat or
Talking
something.
with
I
no
don't know.
mo.
Maybe it's a curse. I can't tell you. All right, we're running out of time. Thank you
Talking
for
with
being there,
no
Miss
mo.
Melissa.
Thanks for
We'll
having
talk
me.
later.
Take care.
All right,
Step in
bye-bye.
the room, let's go. Got that spark, got that flow. Quick hit talk, real talk. Every word on the mark. Lean close, hear that name every time. Bring the flame, one more round, let it show. Talking with no mo. Talking with no mo. Say it once, say it loud. Talking with no